Hey guys, it's Donald, the solo RPG guy here, and I'm going to go through a video here and just give you some guidelines on what I do for my solo RPG. Now, there is no right way to do this. The number one rule I have when it comes to role-playing game, remember, it's a game. You should be having fun. So, my number one rule I have is, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. So this is by no means the end-all be-all. You can do your solo RPGing in any way, shape, or form you desire. I am just going to give you a brief overview of what I'm currently doing right now in my current solo RPG campaign. As you can see, looking in front of you, I have some of my favorite tools and role-playing systems. I have my Forbidden Lands, which, if you look back on my video playlist, you will find my review on that. I also have here my Shadow of the Demon Lord book. I've also done a review on that. I have also my Game Master Apprentice cards. That was the very first video I ever done, so just go back if you have any interest in this. Just look back on my first video. And I also have handy in front of me these two books, Table Fables 1 and Table Fables 2. These are basically a book of tables. So if I need a random table, something that may not be covered by my Game Master Assistance cards or anything else, I have this readily handy. So we start off with that. If you look back on one of my tips for solo RPGing, one of the first things I said you need to do was come up with some background, some setting material. In my case, I am using the Forbidden Lands setting. Number one, it comes with this beautiful map for me to travel around and explore. So I've got that as basically my background. I'm also using the actual setting material. That way I have, the integration of how the races are working together, their quirks, things of that nature, what the actual world is about. In this particular case, in this particular setting, there was this mist that literally covered the entire world. And that mist has recently lifted. But because that mist was around for so long, you couldn't go out at night, you couldn't travel long distances. Basically, everybody pretty much hid in their houses, stayed within the confines of their villages or whatnot, while in the rest of the world, demons were running crazy, doing all kinds of nastiness, mating with all kinds of animals, creating weird creatures, just doing whatever. And of course, over the course of time, with that mist being there, cities have basically fallen into ruin. A lot of villages have fallen into ruin. Pretty much the whole world is in ruin. And now that this mist has lifted, people now have that opportunity to go out and explore, make new contacts, establish trade routes, regrow their farms, all that stuff that would need to be done after some cataclysm. So that is the background I have currently going on in my world using the Forbidden Lands campaign setting. The second thing I mentioned as kind of important is, well, you got to come up with the rules you're going to play by. I've heard it referred to as a rubric, but in simpler terms, pick a role-playing game. Now, there are literally thousands of role-playing games out there. You've got all forms of D&D, the basic, the advanced, first, second, third, fourth, fifth edition. You got Pathfinder. Those are the big popular ones. You've got Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40K. You've got literally hundreds of OSR games out there. So you have your choice as to what role-playing system you want to use. In my case, I am using the Shadow of the Demon Lord mechanics. I like these mechanics. I like the Forbidden Lands mechanics too, but if you made me choose between which game system I prefer, if I was to make a decision right now, it would probably be Shadow of the Demon Lord. It has enough crunch where it's not super simple, super boring, but it's also not so detailed that I will spend hours pouring through charts and documenting character sheets and all that paperwork that needs to be done when you're playing an RPG system. As I've mentioned many times over, I have pretty much every official Wizard of the Coast 3rd edition D&D book they printed. And I like that system to, for the most part, but I would never try to run that one as a solo game. There's just too many mechanics involved, too much, I guess, administration and keeping track of characters and monsters, and plus the fact that if I wanted to make a higher level NPC, I guess I could go online or use one of the random generators, but I have a tendency, I like to customize my NPCs. So, and that's not just NPCs, but monsters as well. When I DM'd for, I don't know, it was like almost 10 years straight, one of the reasons why I had lots of people coming to my game was because they never knew what they were going to come across. 3rd edition had so many templates and whatnot that you can throw on monsters that what looked to be a simple skeleton could have been, a zillion different things. Not just your standard, one hit die, D8 hit point skeleton. One of the best creatures that kept making standard appearances in one of my games were simply dragon horses. They were war horses with the half dragon template that went in flocks, like flocks of birds. So that was a pretty dangerous encounter, and they pretty much dominated the land. And every time the PC saw a flock of them, they went into hiding. There's a funny story about that, and I don't have time to tell it now, but maybe later on in a later video I'll do that. But like I said, pick your mechanics. How are you going to handle combat? How are you going to handle magic? How are you going to handle everything that's incorporated into a role-playing game? And so currently I am using Shadow of the Demon Lord. Recently I did a review of this product here, the Side Quest decks. I think that was my last video, or maybe the second to last video. And I mentioned this particular card right here, this Goblin Trade, where the king asked the PCs to invest the goblins' recent superior weapon supply, but I had changed that from a king to basically one of the peasants, their family, and all the peasantry got together because the goblins kept invading the village for food, for weapons, for whatever they could find. And I also mentioned here that it was the mayor who, was disguised as the demon, was collecting these weapons for some nefarious purpose, yet unknown. Well, thanks to my oracle and further adventuring, this one card now has taken a major plot twist in the fact that there really is a demon who really does collect not just weapons, but anything he can get his hands on. And he's trying to unite all of the goblin tribes throughout the land. Which now, at this point of the story, my PCs are gearing up, or actually they're already there, they're outside the dungeon where this demon and the goblin leaders have come together, and this is like their main base. Basically, my PCs are getting ready to raid the main base and try to kill the demon and take out the goblin leaders so that the goblins don't unite, etc., 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 and just save the land from all that turmoil. Now, the next thing I'm going to need is some form of dungeon generation. Now, you see in front of you, I have the Forbidden Lands DM's Guide, which comes with a rudimentary dungeon generator as far as, you know, the rooms, the hallways, the stairways, the doors, the contents, various charts on traps and dungeon oddities and things of that nature. Now, this will be my starting point, but as you can see, it's only just a few pages and there's not really a whole lot to this. This is just the basics. This is something simple. All I need are D6s, and it just so happens, since I'm playing using the Shadow of the Demon Lord mechanics, Shadow of the Demon Lord just uses D20s and D6s. So the fact that this book, all the charts are D6 or D66 based, is a good starting point. Now, sooner or later, I'm going to need a bit more. So, I've got my Fables 2 book, which also has a pretty good basic dungeon generator as far as doors, locations, locks, the materials, stairs, contents, what the room type might be, various events and encounters that could possibly happen, although I won't probably be using this. But this may give me ideas for something unique, something that may throw a surprise, because that's the biggest part of playing solo RPG, is trying to surprise yourself. So utilizing this book here, which I just showed you just a few pages there with the dungeon generator, but there are literally tons and tons of tables in this one book. Quest, rewards, wilderness and travel, ships, islands and ocean travel, NPCs and enemies, items, of course the dungeon section, buildings, towns and cities. If I wanted to build a world, I could, and religion. Of course, I don't need to build a world because I'm using the Shadow of the Demon Lord world that's already printed out and provided for me. So I have that as taking care of that situation. And since I'm showing you Fables 2, I might as well give you a quick glimpse also into Fables 1, which you can get these books on Amazon. I forgot how much I paid for them. They're not much, 10, 15 bucks a piece. But as you can see, character generator with backgrounds and whatnot, various items, areas, various miscellaneous generators as far as magical ritual, random magical effect, random color, random metal, random card draw, all that good stuff. And like I said, there's a glimpse at some of the tables there. So you can take your solo RPG as simple or as in-depth as you want. You can, with enough material, you can emulate your own DMing and actually surprise yourself on occasion. I mean, obviously, you can't surprise yourself as well as if you were actually playing with another person, but this kind of stuff does fill in the gap pretty well. Now, going back to the Game Master Assistant cards, one of my favorite little tools to use. I've gone over these. You can always go back on my video channel and look at the first review I've done of these. But if you take a look at this with all the information on here, not only do I have my Oracle, but I've also got, sensory snippets, something that might give me an indication or clue as to what could be, either in the room, around the corner, or whatever. For example, let's say I drew this card, the Jangle of Arms and Armor. Well, that could mean maybe there's one of those goblins or somebody is donning their armor, getting ready for guard duty, getting ready to go on patrol, something like that. Brutally oversized weapons. That might indicate, these guys are running around with, the big weapons, the battle axes, the two-handed great axes, maybe even wearing, toting around tower shields. So this gives me not just, I can roll up a creature, but this will help give me an idea as to what they might be doing, wearing, things of that nature. Another thing is you got these belongings here. Now, not only can I use these belongings as when I, kill the goblin and want to check out his body, but let's say I've come across some barrels or container of some sort. Well, I can just, grab a random card here and see, okay, well, let's say I drew this card here. For whatever reason, this box has assassin's weapons, garrote wire, a stiletto, and a poison kit. All right, well, gee, my characters might want to take some of these weapons. I can, okay, what would be a good assassin weapon? Go to the Shadow of the Demon Lord book and grab a weapon that, an assassin might want. So there's my treasure. There's what might be on the body. There's what might be in that container or whatever. There's also these things called catalysts. So if I need a random event to happen other than running into the room and finding the goblin or finding the demon or whatever, I can go and draw one of these cards until I find one that makes sense. My clothes are stolen. Well, that might only apply if I slept in a dungeon or slept somewhere. But so right now that one wouldn't be good. Lost a bet wouldn't be good. But this one right here, an apparent haunting. Now I can possibly put some type of incorporeal undead creature that might be running around thinking, hey, these goblins are at lunch. Or this might be the ghost of somebody the demon has killed. Whatever. Again, I can use these cards to help facilitate the story in a forward direction. Another way I can spice up my NPCs or my enemy spellcaster type antagonists is, again, utilizing these cards. Up here in the corner, there is a symbol here that represents elements: the fire, the water, the earth, the air. And then there's these symbols here for various runes. Now I can take, let's say I come across a goblin or some other creature and it happens to be a spellcaster. Well, I can just randomly pick 3 cards, take a look at them, and if he's a spellcaster, well, let's see here. We've got an air symbol, the mountain symbol, and the fire symbol. So when I look, and I've also, again, got these runes here, which I can then reference on these cards here. There's the reference for that. So let's see here. We've got earth, fire, and air. And then when I look at the runes, let's see, I think the rune cards, yeah, there's plenty of rune cards here. So let's just say hypothetically, I got this one here, where it talks about, okay, birth, fertility, growth, liberation, renewal, new beginnings, love, and family. That symbolizes life. That symbolizes, kind of like a healing type thing. So, when I look at my Shadow of the Demon Lord list of spell categories, not only do I have the earth and the fire, but I've got life, and I've got all these others here that I can take these rune markers, look at the appropriate rune, and come up with a spell list for my NPCs that isn't just a generic spell list. When you play D&D, most mages, they always take the good old standby magic missile, shield, those basic spells that, pretty much every first level mage takes. Well, this will add some variety. Let's say I happen to get this guy here, water and regeneration. So this guy might specialize in the water tradition, and I believe the life tradition is the one that actually has some type of regeneration. There might be another one that has regeneration involved in it, but for now, we'll just stick to that. So this guy likes water spells and regenerating. Let's see if we can find another good one here. Ice and frustration. That would be okay. Well, when I look on here, ice falls under the water category, I believe. And then with the frustration, well, he's probably a bad guy. And I can tell you that the forbidden magics and the curse magics, if you are on the receiving end of those, you will definitely be frustrated. So something like this great tool here, can do lots of things. Like I said, the limit is only your imagination. Sometimes even if I come across just a random person and I think they're going to be around for a while, I use these cards to like determine its level. These numbers here are on a sliding scale. So what I will do is just simply flip over 2 cards. Oh, in this case, it didn't turn out too well because we have 7, and then I always subtract the second one. And actually, with Shadow the Demon Lord, there are 0-level creatures. The PC races, for the most part, can be 0 level. So there, I've come across a 0-level PC. But let's say I drew something like this. 7 minus 4. Now that character's 3rd level. So that gives me some variation. And since it actually makes thematic sense when I played with these cards do have a tendency to give me a lot of 0 levels, few 3rd levels, and very rare high levels. It's very rare that I come across like an 8th or 9th level, which actually makes sense in this particular world, simply because this game here focuses on 1st through 10th level anyway. So again, these cards, that game mechanic, they kind of work together for me. Again, your mileage may vary. You may not have Shadow the Demon Lord. You may be playing D&D. You can, again, just utilize these cards in any way your imagination pushes you. I highly recommend this tool here. Again, go back and look at my first video on the subject. And let's continue on with this video. Now the next item here is a DM binder, player binder, however you want to refer to it, that I've put together so far, where I keep a lot of notes and whatnot. Since I have several different, well actually I only have one current campaign going, but should I decide to, flip it around, use a Forbidden Lands rule set or vice versa, or try one of my other RPGs that I have at my disposal, I've got this here, which has more random charts I've picked up along the way. I think this comes from Maze Rats or Knave or one of those other simple, free to download or really low cost games. As you can see, tons of various charts for various things. I know you can't make it all out very clear, but more importantly, in the back, there's another chart from another game right there that I haven't done a review on yet. That was the second game. I think it was the second game I ever tried solo, called Legends of Fantasy. Again, it's got some charts that I can reference just in case. Various things. As far as magic resistance, sample encounters, poisons, traps. For that particular game that I can easily adapt over to whatever game system I got. More information here as far as setting up a game for this particular game, but that material can also be incorporated. And then, of course, characters. Got some characters back here. This is, I don't know if you can see his name. This is my primary character in this campaign. He's one of the 2 characters that have survived so far throughout the whole ordeal. This is Mr. Legagorn Woodsmith. I'm sure you can figure out how he got his name Legagorn. He is a warrior fighter who specializes in the bow. and he is looking probably become a sharpshooter, basically the bow expert. That is his thing. And then his sister, younger sister, who is a magician spellbinder from Shadow the Demon Lord. And as you can see, although it looks like it's a lot, it really isn't. This is real easy to keep track of as far as all the special abilities they get at the varying levels. As you can see, her special list isn't that big, but she's got her spell selection there, equipment lists, basically a standard character sheet. I know people like going online and downloading various character sheets and using those, but me, I'm old school. I'd rather do pen and paper, write it out. That way I know I've got things laid out in a way I can easily find them. I have a tendency, no matter what the role-playing game is, to set it up in a similar way, as long as it's not too complicated. But yeah, you need your characters, so I've got those. I have not a vast, but a fairly large miniature collection. And this is a sample of some of the miniatures I got, which I'm just going to utilize these right now for the game I'm running now. Meet Legagorn. It's not the greatest paint job, but I did actually paint him. And then his sister, Ambrosia. These are those WizKids pre-primed minis. And I tried a couple painting techniques on these. And, you know, they're okay. I'm not the greatest painter, I will admit it, but they work. If these miniatures here, these little skeleton archers, I believe they came from my Descent 1 game, the original Descent board game. Now, I've had that game for a long time, and it's been torn apart, and the box pieces have been lost, but I did go through it and try to salvage what I could. So I salvaged a bunch of the minis, and I salvaged the some of the tokens, and of course I salvaged the tiles. But even though they're skeletons, I'm just going to use these for my goblins and my orcs and whatever else may come along. And if I need something else, I mean, I got tons of Plano boxes, plus I got a big box full of miniatures. And then, of course, if need be, I've got Descent 2. So I got my miniatures, but I got these pulled out just to use right now for my current campaign to get that ready. Me personally, I know some people like using them and some people don't, but I use miniatures, obviously. So I have here my wet erase markers, and if you see, my actual table is covered with a Chessex map for the grid squares. I also have one for hexagons. Shadow the Demon Lord, the mechanics themselves are designed more for theater of the mind, but they do give you enough information that you can accurately use a grid, and it doesn't specify either way what type of grid. So for this campaign, I will be using my square grid. Like I said, I do have a hex grid, which when I start my next campaign, if I decide to use the fantasy trip, that is all based on hexagons. So I'll just take this one off, throw the hexagon map down. I've got my markers to draw out the dungeon if placement of the PCs and the monsters becomes important. I am ready to go with that. And the next thing, which you've seen in every single one of my videos, probably don't know what it is, but it's that backdrop. That backdrop is actually a quad-paneled, customizable DM screen where if I need to keep notes or something real handy, I can just plop them inside that DM screen and I will have it ready. The notebook I showed you earlier with all those charts and tables, that was a landscape. This DM screen is portrait. Okay, guys, sorry for that interruption. When I record videos, I'm recording it here in my living room, and sometimes life happens, and that was a fairly important phone call from a good friend of mine, who I'm going to give a shout out to now. Hi, Robert. If you want to watch he has a small YouTube channel where he does things with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Hearthstone and 3D graphics, and I've done some 3D graphics as well. You might want to check out his channel, Cadlin, Cadlyn. He's also one of the guys I role-played with for many years, so he can testify to some of the crazy things that has happened in some of our games. But going back to the subject of solo RPG, as you can see, I've got my game world, I've got the setting, I've got my rule set, I've got all the little knickknacks to help me generate quests, dungeons, things of that nature. I've got my suggestive materials, all these things that I've mentioned in my solo tips video, which you can go check out on my channel. I've taken it all and putting it all together for you. And then, of course, you can add on to the fact that if I ever come across a point where I might get stuck or I need more, I guess, input, I can just go ahead and look over to my bookshelf, look at my collection of games, and just say to myself, okay, I need a random event or I need a random monster. Go crack open a box, reach in, grab a card, see what it is, boom, surprise, and then convert it over to the game mechanics that I'm currently using. So that's just one way of putting it all together. Like I said, that's my way. There is no perfect way. There is no one way to do it. Like I said before, there are tons of RPGs. Every game master does things different. Every player does things different. And when you do solo RPGing, well, you are both that game master and that player. So just follow the number one rule. Number one rule is if you're having fun, you're doing it right. Remember, keep the G in RPG. It is a game. You should be having fun. So do whatever it is you need to do to have fun in your role-playing games. This is just my way of doing things. You do it your way. And like I said, if you have other ideas that you might want to share, feel free to put them in the comments below. All the input helps. Sometimes you might come across something that I might want to try to put into my games. And vice versa, you might find something on my YouTube channel that you might want to put into your game. So until my next video, happy gaming.